Hello, I'm Don Gray. I like to talk about my racing career and how it got started. In 1964, I purchased a 1964 Chevrolet 409, and I was just a young kid, and I kept getting in trouble with that car because we put spacers in the front and jacked the front end straight up and lowered the rear end of it and took the front bumper off and put two heater hose back to it, or what's called dryer hose back to the carburetors, and I was running around on the street, and I was constantly staying in trouble with that car. And finally, I ended up in the courtroom, and the judge said, I've heard enough about that car. I'm going to get off the bench, and we're going to go outside, and I want to look at it and see just what's going on. So we go out there, and he looks at that car, and he says, boy, you either build you a race car or you're going to jail. So that's how torture came about. 2 months later, I went to see a man named Willard Gott in Blumel, Tennessee, and asked him if he could build me a car for $1,200, and he said he could. But, you know, that turned out to be $12,000, but anyway, that's what we started out that way. And we got the car ready and going to build the engine then, and Jack Chrisman, he ran funny cars for Ford. He drove a Comet at that time. He came in, and he brought most of the parts for the engine. And so we got all that together, and we went up to Red Cornettes in Kentucky and got him to balance it, and brought it back. And I didn't realize we was going to have a 10,000 RPM car, but that's exactly what they were building for me. And so we got it done and decided to take off. We put 66 on the door because I thought we were going to race it in 66, and this was in, but we got to go out in August of 65. So we left and we slicked up to Virginia to a little old drag strip up there to try it out. Willard and I and Jack, and we got up there and got that thing up on the line. I'm telling you, I was young. We pulled up there, and I took that thing to the floorboard and dropped the clutch, and it was in reverse. I almost took a guardrail down behind us, but anyway, got through that and go back up there again, and I took it to the floor and dropped the clutch, and that thing was turning about 10 grand off the line when I dropped that clutch. You know, it lost some RPM. But anyway, I missed second gear. And that announcer said, folks, don't worry, he'll be back. He's just showing off. But it was over that night because it jerked the studs up out of the heads. Back then, they didn't have screw-in studs, and they pinned them. But the pins helped. The heads didn't. The cast iron burst out, and they come loose. So we took it back, and they brazed those up because they were Monondela heads. They were expensive heads, so they got those fixed. And Jack was running a lot of match races, and he was going to tour around. He had a couple of meets, the national meets he was going to do on the East Coast at the time, but he wanted us to go with him. So we took off and toured with him, and I told him I didn't have the money to go. Told Willard, I said, I don't have the money to do this. And Willard said, get you $300, and I'll teach you how to do it. I'll show you. So what we'd do, we'd call in to these, he'd call these these little small tracks and say, if we're coming in, if you give us a little money, $50, $7,500, whatever you can give, we'll come in. So we got a 10,000 RPM car, which at that time was just unheard of. They had 3 or 4 around the country, but for our area, it wasn't around in this region. So anyway, they'd pay us to come in. And then first thing we picked up Kendall Oil as a sponsor, and then we got Champion giving us plugs. And so he taught me how to go out and race without being so expensive. One of the most expensive things about that car is if we ran it real hard, which I didn't always run it as hard because we could beat them. We were so far ahead of everybody in our class that we just had to go from there and had to change valve springs every week. But a lot of times we'd get by it if I didn't run too hard. So we stayed out with him about 3 months, and then he took off. He had one national meet. We left him for a week. Then we come back, and he had another one. Then I had to go back to work because I had a job here at one of the factories, so I come back and that stopped that. But over the period of time that we ran this car, I only got beat one time, and that was because I pulled it back. I had a rear view mirror in that car, and I looked back at it, at the car behind me, and I thought, well, I got you beat. I don't need to take it on up any higher. And I pulled it back in 4th gear, and he nipped me right at the line. So that was the only time it was beat. And we ran it from August of 65 through 1st of 68. We ran about February of 68, and then it didn't run anymore. That was the end of that. So, well, all the trophies we won with that car, gave them all away. Yeah. I gave them to kids that wanted them, and then when I was dirt racing, I gave those to the driver. You know, I kept the 2 where we run when we was running Torture 2, I kept 2 of those trophies because of the national meet wins, but, you know, basically I didn't keep anything. Last time I started it, we had to take I had to take the starter off, and I had to take the steering box off just to get the headers off, because back then, they may have had chrome headers, I'm not sure, we didn't have them, mine were painted white. Yeah. And so I started, and those headers got all black and stuff, and I thought, well, I'm going to start this thing again. So when we go to these meets, they let me pull my trailer in and then unload the car off the back, and I can sit there in the trailer and let people come up and look at it and have conversations with them and autograph the photographs, so we can pull right back up in the trailer, and it's not a big deal because we'd have to push it around if we did.